In 2021, Splitgate went from an unknown indie shooter to one of the hottest games on the market. But just as fast as it blew up, it crumbled under its own weight of success. Servers crashed, hype faded, and Splitgate quickly fell off the radar for most gamers. But now, the people behind the game, 1047 Games, is back with a new vision, Splitgate 2. They're ditching the old game, rebuilding it from the ground up, and promising a fresh start. The question is, will it work? Especially considering the fiercely competitive market of PvP shooters they're trying to be a part of. Today, we're diving deep into Splitgate's insane rise, its devastating fall, and whether or not Splitgate 2 has what it takes to become a lasting success and rise from the ashes. Let's start at the beginning. To uncover the origins of Splitgate, we actually need to travel to Stanford University. More precisely, we need to travel to Stanford in 2017. That's also where at the time two students, Ian and Nicholas, met each other. The two immediately connected about their love for gaming, their love for certain game mechanics, and just spent a lot of time together. I just envisioned them eating ramen at their dorms, reminiscing about their favorite games, talking about their favorite game mechanics, and just really hitting it off and finding out they have the same kind of style and taste in what they like to play. They believed the two of them could develop a unique experience. That the two of them could actually create a quite unique shooter combining their love for portals and fast-paced arena shooter action. And that's what they set out to do. The next step was creating a proof of concept, and in the final weekend before the final exam, they invited all their friends over for a LAN party to test out the proof of concept. It was a smash hit and they knew it. Later on in his career, Ian was interviewed by Business Insider about the origin of the game, and when it came to the LAN party, he said the following. Initially, nobody wanted to because everybody's got final exams to study for, right? But I got them to agree. My 7 friends with gaming PCs, and they came over and played tested for 45 minutes. We ended up playing for 5 hours straight that day. That's when I knew I had a hit. The reaction from the playtest caused Ian to team up with his housemate Nicholas and co-found 1047 Games. 1047, by the way, referring to the dorm building they were both living in at the time, and it's still the name of the company today. Combining the iconic mechanics and game feel of Halo with the cerebral aspect of space-bending portals from the Portal series. Especially Ian was absolutely fascinated with the ideas of implementing portals in a competitive shooter. It sounded fun on paper, but the challenge was the execution. And as we're about to discover, implementing game mechanics wasn't really their biggest problem. Splitgate had a promising concept, but it had a pretty rough start. Released in 2019, it didn't really make a huge splash. No one really noticed it at first. It struggled to stand out in the very crowded, very tough FPS market. The game's asking price at that time in early access was $20, which certainly wasn't really helping at the time when it came to having people discover and try out your game. It gets worse when you think back to what we as gamers were all playing in 2019. At the time, Splitgate, an unknown IP from an unknown developer, was competing with titans such as Apex Legends, Call of Duty Warzone, Halo Infinite. I mean, this is during the start of COVID. I mean, you can imagine the competition. And those are just the woes connected to the discoverability of the game. It gets worse too when it comes to having people actually sticking around. In its early access, the developers noticed a lot of people quickly leaving their game. The problem is probably multifaceted, but it didn't really help that most players found the game too complex for casual players. Especially when it came to implementing the portals efficiently. You had to master the portal mechanics in a way that no other FPS ever required you to do so, and it sort of requires you to implement another way of thinking about space. And that barrier made it very tough for many people to get into or to stick to it. Here's a prime first-hand example of how portals can cause frustration. The cherry on top of all these challenges was the fact that the studio was running out of money at the time, and the team had barely enough money to keep the game going as it was. They had to rely on investor rounds just to keep the game afloat. And they would have had to close up for good as well if they did not have changed their strategy, allowing them to live long enough to reach their well-deserved true potential. Seeing the lack of traction, Ian and the team realized they needed a new strategy. In mid-2020, they made the decision to go completely free-to-play and rely on the cosmetic microtransaction to fund the game instead. What was the immediate impact? Well, removing the price barrier immediately boosted the player numbers, and it caused more people to check out the game for the first time. Growth was still relatively slow because it was PC only, and nobody really had heard of the game at this point. 1047 Games really needed something more than just free-to-play. They needed a way to reach a much bigger audience. And that's why they focused all their energy in bringing out a decent console port. This, alongside a huge marketing push, finally caused them to lift off. This console release also filled the gap. Halo Infinite was still months away from release, so the console Andes were hungry for a good arena shooter. Big streamers like Shroud and XQC, Tim the Tatman started playing Splitgate. Their Twitch audiences flooded into the game, leading to a snowball effect where more people joined up because of the hype, ranking among the top watched games on the platform for that month. The game became a Twitch sensation. The player count skyrocketed from 4,000 to close to 7,000 in just 2 weeks. Another couple weeks later, the game hit 200k concurrent players across all platforms. Just to compare, in May 2021, Splitgate was relatively small with a couple of thousand players. By July, it was competing with Apex Legends and Warzone in terms of active players. The entire situation was so insane that the devs called out that they didn't foresee this type of success when it came to their server infrastructure. There was an incredible dev post made on Reddit at the time where the devs talk about this problem openly. I'm just gonna let the clip roll out because it puts into perspective how much of a sudden hit this game was.
The kind of growth we're experiencing is honestly kind of hard to believe. I mean, we've gone from literally 400 concurrent to over 200,000 concurrent on Tuesday in a matter of 3 weeks. You know, that's unprecedented growth. Even Among Us had, I mean, that was actually the example we looked at as a sort of best case scenario. By no means did we think this would happen, but we looked at Among Us and we said, okay, well, best case scenario, if we actually blow up like Among Us does, what does that curve look like? And if you look at their Steam charts, they went from 800 to 1,200 to 3,000 to 7,000 to 70,000 to 400,000 month by month. So that was 5 months. We've gone from 400 to 200,000 in 3 weeks. We were preparing to basically hit, okay, we've got 5 months to get to 400,000. That was the timeline we were expecting in a best case scenario, not, 200,000 in a matter of weeks. I mean, I'm still in disbelief. I mean, it's humbling and it's incredible, but it's also just incredibly overwhelming and crazy.
And I gotta be honest, this was also the same time when I discovered the game for the first time and when I hopped in for the first time. And I loved it. I played it on and off ever since a couple years ago. Regardless, okay, I'm getting sidetracked. In the clip, the dev was talking about the server infrastructure. And that's actually quite important because that's the source of the main problem that caused the game to not retain the player base it could have had. Because the server rollout was not fast enough, being the cause of incredibly long queue times when the game was at the height of its popularity. Sometimes people would wait in queue for up to 45 minutes just to join a match, just to get into the client. I mean, look at these old screenshots I found on the old Discord server. It's incredible. I mean, people were fucking waiting in queue for 50 minutes just to join, not even the game, just join the client. I mean, they're doing a DJ Khaled right here. They're suffering from success. DJ Khaled! And I'm sure initially they had imagined that they would be able to fix it up and that they would get the game up and running, but it took too long. And the hype died out, people left, people couldn't deal with the queue times. In September of 2022, the devs released a statement that they would not continue with the support of Splitgate 1. Essentially, they didn't want it to over-monetize a game which they knew in the core of the code wasn't able to live up to the expectations that the devs had imagined. So they stopped further development, they kept the game up and running. Obviously, people left. There wasn't really much excitement about the game, but it was still playable. But what the devs wanted to do was to build the next generation of Splitgate on a better foundation free to play, with a very good code underpinning, and with the server capacity to hold the players there. Fresh start, no baggage from tech. And that's where we are right now. And I, just like all of you, got to play in the open alpha, and I was very impressed with how the game felt, how the game looked, how it played. And it seems like you guys feel a very similar way. I mean, the sentiment online is very, very positive. People are looking forward to it. People are hoping that they don't fumble the ball this time. People are really getting their hopes up in terms of another Halo Titanfall-like experience. In general, I think everybody is hoping for this game to succeed and for it to succeed in the long term as well. And it's looking good. The numbers were good, the vibes were good. Just look around online. The reaction to the playtest, the reaction on Reddit. Speaking of Reddit, there was actually a Reddit AMA from the devs, and I want to go over that right now and kind of summarize the most important details for your convenience. I'll also link it in the description if you want to read the whole thing yourself. So release date wise, they had only mentioned that it's going to drop even before December, probably even before November. So, you know, basically the second half of the year, maybe beginning of the fourth quarter, something like that. That's perfectly fine. I mean, this was an open alpha. I assume they still have a lot of things to do. They also mentioned later on that this is about half of the maps, so there's still a lot of content to come, but I mean, it's not too far away, and the game is already in a very solid state, so honestly, I find that extremely encouraging. They also addressed the fact that a lot of the players were kind of confused about the map design, and a lot of people were missing the old school arena shooter type maps, and they have mentioned that they're looking to improve the flow of the map, the portal aspects of the map, although they did touch up the maps even before the pre-alpha. To me, even like the more open, the snowy maps, they felt very different. Circling back to the fact that we got around half of the game, they have hinted at the fact that there will be more maps, more modes, and possibly more weapons and abilities. One of the things that's kind of up in the air, and they're leaning on the side of not doing, is adding more factions, although I'm pretty sure even they themselves, it's not like locked in. I would be surprised if they suddenly announced like 5 new factions on launch. To me, the quality of the maps, the game modes, the weapons, the UI, the netcode is of way higher importance than the fact that we're gonna get 2 more factions. It's, you know, the foundation is important. They seem to also be really on the ball when it comes to player feedback and prioritizing community feedback. People complain about respawn timers being too long, that the round and kill limits in the game modes felt a little restrictive, and they're looking at that. To me, it's an indication that they're looking towards what the community is saying, and they're listening to us, and that's always a good sign for a game when it's actually being co-developed by community and game designers. So yeah, hats off to them. Those are very good signs at this point, and I'm just seeing a lot of love in the community. I'm seeing a lot of optimism. It might be the hopium of the early days, but you know what? I'll take it at this point, because yeah, well, I just want this game to succeed. So if you have any more thoughts, ideas, if you know more than me, let me know. Write me in the comments. I'm a very small channel. I'm trying to break out. Any sign of your support would be greatly appreciated. Like this video if you learned something. If you're also hyped for the game, leave a little comment. I'll try to reply to every comment. It's not like I get hundreds of them, so you know, I give you special attention, my friend. Special attention specially for you, okay? Okay, well anyway, I'm getting tired. I'm excited. You're excited. We're all excited. See you next time. Bye-bye.